aliens? AI? Is it little green men? Is it something that's real? Is it sci-fi or is it straight out of scripture?
The world has gone crazy, y'all. Every day the headlines scream louder, the truth gets twisted, and the darkness grows bolder. But I've got good news for you. We're not running from the darkness, we're confronting it. Buckle up, my friends, and for the past 6 months, my team has been tirelessly working to bring you something brand new. It's a show that exposes deception, it reveals kingdom truth, a show that flips the narrative of the world completely upside down. Nothing off the table. No topics that are too wild, too dark, or too controversial. Because truth doesn't hide, and light does not back down. That's exactly what you're going to see this season on The Counter. So lean in, open up your heart, because this isn't just about entertainment. It's about a great prophetic movement. Alrighty then, here we go. Let's roll it. Welcome to The Counter,
where we decode the lies of modern day culture.
Using biblical truths, divine revelation,
and prophetic insights.
Pull up a seat to this prophetic powerhouse
where we expose the enemy's playbook.
We will counter fear.
We will counter deception.
We will counter woke ideology.
We will counter legalism.
We will counter the occult.
This
is
The Counter.
Joining me here today is my good friend Joseph Z.
Hey, brother.
I want to talk to you about some stuff.
It's going to get into some stuff, I think, today. We're going to go there.
So we're actually going to talk about experiences we've had.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about experiences other people have had. Where is it at in the Word of God? How do we have a biblical lens? Alan DiDio.
The truth is out there, my friend. And we are going to discover it today.
I want to believe.
I want to believe.
Right.
Yes.
So we have this guy over here knows a whole lot about what we're talking about. Tony Merkel is going to be joining us today.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm looking forward. We're actually going to be talking about reverse engineering. We're talking about people that have had encounters. What is all that, and how does it fit into a biblical worldview? Mm-hmm. So are you going to help me with that?
I will try my best.
Tony Merkel from the Confessionals. And then down here at the end, we have my good friend, Pastor Darren Stott.
Yeah, come on.
Hello, Pastor Troy. And, they're not actually green men. They're actually gray.
Gray. Yeah. We're going to talk about grays here in a little bit.
All right. Let's do it.
Okay. So, guys, I want to start off here by talking to all four of y'all and say this, that a few years ago, I was at a summit against human trafficking in Washington, D.C. It was actually my first time to ever be in Washington, D.C. I'd never been there before. And of course, I was like, I was losing my mind, man. Gosh, it's awesome. And then we went into the Capitol building, and I got to speak, actually in the Capitol building, and all the congressional bunch was there. But at the same exact time that I was speaking, there was two events that was taking place. So that night, I couldn't wait to turn on Fox News. Hey, man, we had this, and there was nothing. There was nothing on the news about this summit against trafficking. Nothing. And we even had Fox News girls that were there that were actually being moderators and hosts. And I was like, what? Why is that? The reason why nobody was talking about our event in D.C. was because at the same time, under the same dome that I was at, a guy by the name of David Grusch was speaking. Are you guys aware of David Grusch?
Yes.
It was there the same day I was speaking. He was also speaking. So what do you know about David Grusch?
Well, he's a new whistleblower. And we've had a lot of those come out lately because the whistleblower laws have been changed, where before your career would be ruined if you came out and exposed information that's going on with the DOD or with these studies into UAPs. But now there's protections for whistleblowers. So people like David Grusch are coming out, and he's declaring that they have not only crashed craft, but that they have biologics from these crashed craft. This guy probably knows more about that than about any of us at the table here.
Maybe.
So you have good reason to, because of the confessionals and because of your podcast and all the people and all the weird stuff that you guys talk about. And so I want to tell you, I imagine we've heard some strange things on your podcast, but you should have heard what was going on at the hotel lobby that night.
Really?
Everybody was like, okay, I heard him say this, and somebody else would say, I heard him say that. And I was like, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, where have you been? And I was like, Well, I was speaking at the Congress, speaking before Congress today, and they're like, "You weren't the only one. David Grusch was," and they said that he was a CIA guy, and I didn't know anything about any of this. I'm like, "What are y'all talking about?" Yeah, he said that there had been that the United States of America were actually partnering with aliens, and we're also reverse engineering downed and crashed spacecraft, and that it was well known among our intelligence agencies that this was a big part of the next level events that are actually taking place.
Yeah, so they are absolutely working with something, right? And what that is to be defined by the people who are receiving the story. But his big claim is that not only do we have the physical craft, but the biologics. And I think in the Christian worldview, that can create some real complications for people's traditional Christian theology.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that today, and we will. So we all want to hammer that on does it fit, because one of the very first interviews that I ever did with you in front of a live audience, which has actually turned out to be one of my favorite interviews I've ever had.
2020.
Hey, no, yeah. it was great.
Thanks, Troy.
He was on his game that day.
Right. No, I saw the one he did with you, and mine was much.
It was much better. Well, I can tell you this. I get up there and I'm so excited, and I'm going to talk about redeeming your timeline, how time and physics work. I'm going to talk about numbers. I'm the numbers guy. I'm going to bring my A game. This is what I'm going to do. And he said, aliens. Tell me about what you think about aliens. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And we had a 2-hour conversation about aliens. And the first sentence that I started, he said, well, do you believe in them? And I said, the issue is not if aliens are real or if I believe in them or not. The issue is, or if there are aliens or if there's not aliens, the issue is, are they of God's camp or are they not of God's camp?
Right.
How anything else flushes out, that's really all the information that is imperative for me to know is this of God's camp or is it not of God's camp?
Right.
And then we went down from there. And so people don't know how to start off with the premise of, okay, is this real or is not? We need to start off with the premise of, is this of God's camp or is this not of God's camp? So
if these things are taking people against their will, I would say it's probably not of God's camp.
I would say that's probably not of God's camp.
When somebody is experiencing sleep paralysis, they're completely paralyzed, and they find themselves being taken out of their home and find themselves in basically being shifted into a sci-fi movie, I would say that's not of God's camp.
Terrorized and also had reproductive experiments done on them.
Yes.
And physical experiments and things like that. And I would say that's not of God's camp.
No, and the reproductive experiments and stuff goes into, well, why is that?
Yes.
If we're talking about this other realm, things piercing that veil, and demonic forces coming through, why are they so interested in our DNA?
Yes.
Why are they so interested in what makes a human? And what is the grays? There's a lot of people out there that theorize that grays are essentially just a drone, a biological drone waiting to be inhabited. But by what? Demonic entities? I don't know.
I want to just throw this out there and tell you, I recently did a podcast and people were asking me, do you believe in Bigfoot or not? You ever been out squatching? Like, I've never been out squatching. I'm never going to go squatching. However, if I see one, I'm going to blast him. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to throw it all to the wind and I'm going to blast him with everything that I have, and we're just going to call it a day.
Absolutely.
And they're like, okay, so what do you, and you and I were bear hunting in Canada.
You put them up, get them stuffed and put them in your office.
Yeah, and I'm like, but there's a lot of issues with that because it might be physical, it might not be physical, it might be in and out, and there might be others that you cannot see. And that's going to be a problem. But I absolutely believe that if you're going to ask me, do you believe in Bigfoot? I would say I believe that they are biological drones for something else. It's something that is grown. It's something that is, it definitely is not some monkey that's good at hiding. That's not what it is. It's not that. And either everybody who has ever seen one is an outright liar or a lunatic, or as the late Dr. Michael Heiser used to say, the whole paradigm changes if just one of them is telling the truth. And so I absolutely believe that they are some kind of an avatar for something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a whole different, I'll tell you why I think that one of these days, and we'll continue to move on. But who can tell me what David Grusch actually testified? Do any of you guys know what he testified?
So he was basically coming out as somebody who was saying that he mainly was not actually privy to being hands-on, but he was told by secure people as to what was going on. And he was privy to certain information, but it really brought into light the idea that our government working in conjunction with these entities and these craft and recovering them, and it laid the groundwork for people like Jake Barber to come forward, who was claiming to be part of a UFO crash retrieval team, releasing video of the egg-shaped UFO that he recovered images of. And this is something that there have been people for years coming out talking about how, as whistleblowers, I mean, I had a guy on my show in 2018, 2019. He came out saying that he was part of a UFO crash retrieval team. And this is, I think, maybe a good story to kind of share, because it does lay the groundwork for the interdimensional aspect of things, the demonic aspect of things. This guy, he didn't want to use his real name, so we just called him Charlie. And he tells a story about how when he was in the military, he was they gave him a job of recovering technology and data and information. It's something that he didn't want to do, but they gave it to him. And he would go out on missions with the same crew of people. Some were more, guns guys, and some were scientist guys, and he was the tech guy, and they would go out on missions. And he said most of the missions were never anything unusual or strange, but this one time they were told that they're going to retrieve a downed aircraft, and he had no idea what this aircraft was, and his job was to retrieve the data off of it. They spent, I think it was like 35, 36 hours of a boat ride to get to this location. He wouldn't tell me where it was. It was another, I think, 2-day hike into the location. And when they came upon the craft, he said, I've never seen a craft like this. It was jet black. And he said, wherever they were, it was hot. But he said when he touched it, it was cold at the touch. So there was a difference there. They get inside, and his job is to retrieve data. And so he's looking where he can start retrieving data from, and the language that he's seeing on the dashboard or wherever this was, he didn't recognize. And he has a manual, he's flipping through his manual trying to figure out what this language is so he can figure out how to do this. And one of the scientists came over to him, and he knew the scientist, they've done things together before. The scientist says, you're not gonna find that in there. And he's like, whatever, dude. And he just keeps flipping. The scientist doubles down, slams his hand down on the book and says, I'm telling you, you're not going to find that in there. And he said, what do you mean? He said, that's Enochian language. And he said, what's that? And he's like, that's a demon language. Get your stuff together. We need to get out of here. And so they got their stuff together. They got out of there. They destroyed it with thermite. And as they were coming back to the ship, they experienced supernatural things that, in hindsight, now that I know what I know today from then, I believe that they probably went through some kind of dimensional shift just getting there. And they were retrieving information off a downed aircraft, which goes right into what Jake Barber's been saying, which Jake Barber says that they're using psionics. They're using the psychological aspect of the brain to connect to these UFOs, to call them in, to take control of them, to bring them down. Sometimes they crash. And I think that's probably what happened here. They crashed and they had to go retrieve it. And I think that it may not have been pulled fully here. And I know it sounds so crazy and sci-fi, right? But when we have the idea of UFOs being nuts and bolts and very physical things, like there's countless people who have seen UFOs and it was very physical. It almost looked metallic. That's here. But if these things are being brought here from another realm, that opens the door. Not only are there biologics in other realms, but there's physical things in other realms. There are things creating technology in other realms and bringing it here. And Jeremy Corbell even mentioned how we have these spherical UFOs that we have on video. And he said these are almost always drones, the metal ball UFOs that the military's been catching. And he said the reason for that is because whatever's been sending their UFOs over got tired of us shooting them down with their own technology, reverse engineering. So this is an operation that's layered, and they've been doing this for probably generations. And I don't know where you want to go from there, but I just...
Oh, I know. I know where I want to go. Do you know where you want to go from there?
Well, I'm thinking about the physicality of spirituality. And I think that Gnosticism has had a real impact on our thinking. in that we're dualistic, in that we think that there's a spiritual realm that's invisible and pretty ghostly, and then there's a physical realm. We can find this in the scriptures, even beginning in Eden, that God's original plan was that there would be a celestial, terrestrial, hybrid type dynamic, and that Eden wasn't a garden. It says that in Eden, God planted a garden. So what do you have? You've got 2 terrestrial rivers, 2 celestial rivers, 2 rivers that we know of, 2 rivers that we don't know of. The tree of life isn't just this bark with leaves. The tree of life is a celestial, terrestrial hybrid. It's heaven and earth. We have the Nakash, which is not, we think of a snake. We think of Lucifer being a snake, in the garden, but it wasn't a talking snake. Okay. This is the luminescent one where we get the name Lucifer. And he wasn't visiting. He lived there. We have the divine council. So Eden was the place of convergence between 2 realms. We have the New Jerusalem at the end of the book. Is that an invisible, ghostly return of? No, that is a physical city of God that returns to the earth as we see a restoration of that dynamic. So many times we think it's Jesus in the glorified body. It's him eating fish and then taking that physical body up into another realm. So people shouldn't wrestle with, are these things physical or are they ghostly? And the answer is yes. These are hybrid type things. It's the physical and the spiritual, and there's revelation coming, I think, to the body of Christ pertaining to these things. That's where I was thinking when you were talking, because I hear physical and we wrestle, right? We wrestle with that idea. What were you going to say, Troy?
Well, no, I agree with you 10,000% that we think in the Western culture that, we were talking about this earlier, that everything is either angels and demons. We don't consider the different kinds of roles and the species of angelic forms and demon forms. And I agree that the demons are actually fallen from whatever those things are, but I don't agree that they're all the same thing. They're all completely different. And with that said, I also say this too, that, the idea that we struggle with is that why would anything in the angelic or the celestial realm, even if it's fallen, why would there be any form of technology involved?
Right.
There wouldn't be anything mechanical. There wouldn't be like a wheel turning. Wait, stop. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is.
There's a will within a will. There's angels that show up actually in chariots, and that word chariot it's the Hebrew word vehicle. Are you telling me that in the spirit, there are spiritual beings that require vehicles to go from one place to another place?
Yeah.
What is that all about? And it actually appears to be biblical.
Yeah, it does. Elijah, he got taken away in a chariot. It's very interesting when you consider that. There's a here and there principle. When you start thinking about here, as it is on earth, so let it be in heaven. You start getting down to these biblical principles. I think about even sowing and reaping, for example. You take Hebrews 7:8, it says, here mortal men receive tithes, there he receives it, of whom it is witnessed that he lives. So you got a here and a there principle. And whatever you do here, I think what you're saying is it parallels. When you talk about terrestrial and celestial, Darren, I think that there is a mirroring that happens. Even in the book of Revelation, it says, I looked into heaven and saw flashes of lightning, and there was the Ark of the Covenant. And many people say, it went to heaven. It must be in heaven. Well, it could be a here and there principle.
Wow.
We could be having parallel things happening.
Wow. A parallel universe.
Parallel, the mirror universe. Now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now we see through a foggy mirror. How about them apples?
Now, 1 Timothy chapter 4 says, the Spirit speaks expressly that in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits.
Yeah, here we go.
Another translation is wandering impostors or wandering aliens.
Wow.
Come on.
That people will give heed to flying aliens and doctrines of devils.
Wow.
And you got to wonder whether or not all of this is leading up to an end-time deception.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Come on, somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, come on,
But greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world.
Well, Luke 21, you think about that. It says men's hearts will fail them for things that they are observing empirically. They can measure that something is coming down upon the earth. Now, it doesn't say what it is, but when you're looking at that and you put this narrative together, there's something coming that might even deceive the elect, if that were possible. Yeah. And they can measure it. What would it be that's coming to earth that you can watch, expect coming, and your heart begins to fail because you are absolutely paralyzed with what's going to happen?
You know, I think it was in the 60s or in the 90s, 20% of Americans believed in aliens in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Now that is nearing 40%. For the first time in American history, more people believe in aliens than believe in God. And so we're dealing with a narrative that is ramping up, and I believe intentionally, in order to create this mass deception, there's coming what they're calling this great disclosure. And I think that's the entire intent behind it, to get people to turn away from biblical truth and the things of God and to turn to fairy tales.
Well, think when it started, H.G. Wells was read by Orson Welles about War of the Worlds. And when that happened, it was like 40% of the people that heard it believed it? Or there was a small percent that believed it. And so when they heard this type of thing, they thought, oh no. So it's been a mechanism, even in society's popular culture, or you could say zeitgeist or spirit of the culture, that's been there all along. And when you go over to Revelation chapter 16, this is really strong. It goes into the whole thing. Revelation 16:13, it says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. Spirits of demons is what they call these, the Bible calls these, performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to bring them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. So what I see here is that could very well be, maybe, we could hypothesize, right? That these are what we see as greens. The green men, that they look like frogs to the visionary, right? He's seeing frogs that come out of these mouths, but they go and they manipulate kings to go to war. And this could be a very strong deception in the last days.
I think that when it comes to the War of the Worlds, you mentioned that, and I found Annie Jacobson's Area 51 very interesting, the book that she wrote, because she talks about the psychological learnings that came about because of the War of the Worlds, and how our government learned how the masses could be manipulated by using fear. Specifically when it comes to the unknown. And so I do think that there are interdimensional beings that are engaging humanity right now with an intensity maybe that we haven't seen before. And also because of technology, these stories can be told versus in the past, it would be easy to censor it. So now information, it's like in the old days, you had to be on a television network.
Right.
And now we all have our own television network. So it makes accountability a lot more doable when it comes to information and transmission. It's incredible to think that any citizen, any person with a cell phone can do transmission of their story, whether or not you want to believe it or not. With that being said, even though I believe that there's these authentic happenings, our governments know how to use fear-based paranormal information or propaganda in order to bring distraction and also in order to feed through other sorts of agendas. So for me, I've said, and I'd be curious to see what you think, Tony, I tend to separate the UFO conversation from the alien conversation, because I wonder if a lot of what we're seeing that's being called UFOs is actually more governmental manipulation.
I agree with that 10,000%.
Totally.
In order to intimidate our enemies, to say, China, look what we have, or China's saying, hey, look at what we have. But I also have no problem in saying that there's probably some pretty ancient tech that our governments know about. And I also I don't know where you guys are at with this. I think that what we think is high tech is actually very low tech. The technology that I think it's a disgrace that we're using phones. Because what's available is so far beyond phones, so far beyond the energy sources that we have accessible to us. I think that at a certain point, our governments hit pause on the kind of tech that was going to be available to us because of how it could be monetized.
The Templars.
Yeah, so the tech that we have is controllable.
The moon landing.
Is controllable and monetized.
Here we go.
The tech that's available, they would not be able to monetize it.
Yeah, so I guarantee you see the reset over and over and over again, and I think the moon landing is one of the greatest examples of it. I think that a much greater example is the Dark Ages and Templars and all that all this technology is discovered, and then boom, the world is shut down for years and years and years and years and years. That technology is not released in the case of the Dark Ages until almost 500 years later. So in that case, I really think that the Templars and the people that were in charge of governments all over the world, they literally developed technology for 500 years. Okay, now then you can imagine, say, like one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life was when NASA said we've lost the technology to go back to the moon.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what have you guys been doing for the past 50 years? They're not telling us.
Making movies.
Yeah, they're not telling us. So what I'm saying about
Hiring
that is
actors.
this.
So are you saying we didn't go to the moon?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm probably the only person here at this table that thinks that we actually went to the moon. I think that all of the video feed and all of that was propaganda, but I actually think that they went to the moon.
I'm with you on that, Troy.
With that said, I think that as soon as they did, and ending at Apollo 17, is they shut it down. One of the things that they started doing is they didn't even air it on television whenever they went anymore. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, we don't have anything else to show you guys.
It's old news. It's old news. You don't need to air it.
It's old news. News feed is going on. And then boom, they shut it down and nobody went anymore.
Right.
That doesn't mean that nobody went. It means that it wasn't public after that anymore. And I think that they have been developing. If you think Ziploc baggies is a big deal, man, if you think, what is the tie thing that we do? We do some kind of, that comes from NASA. Ziploc bags.
Velcro.
Yeah, Velcro. If you think Velcro is a big deal, that ain't nothing compared to what they developed over the past 50 years. And now that we're going back to the moon, we're starting to do that again. You don't have to get 500 years ahead of everybody anymore to be a quantum leap. You can be 20 years ahead, 10 years ahead. And you were a quantum leap ahead of everybody.
It was almost a distraction saying look up to the cosmos because that's where these beings are coming from the first heaven. But we all know that these beings are not coming from the first heaven. So everyone's looking up saying these things are coming down. They're not coming. You don't go up to access the supernatural highway of beings. You go in. So they distracted us by saying, look up. Meanwhile, the people that know what's up are not going up. They're actually going in and out.
Wow. And even down. So the whole big thing of UFOs coming out of water, going into water.
Volcanoes.
There's clearly something going on underneath the water. And, it's...
And that's new. That's new, right?
Newish.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
It's newish.
All right.
Well, the first light bulb ever invented is still burning. So the technology has already been downgraded from the first light bulb. You've got the Baghdad battery and what we're discovering now with all of the pyramids. So we're definitely holding on to technology and not releasing it to the general public.
I feel like we should not skip over the term fallen angel technology, right? Yeah. So when it comes to the Tic Tac UFO, the Tic Tac UFO, I believe, was our government testing reverse engineered technology on our pilots to see how they would act when they encounter something that they weren't expecting, so that they study that and they know how to introduce that technology to their foreign adversaries, knowing how those pilots then will react to this kind of technology.
Oh, there's the big crash, Alan, where we got to jump in.
It's going to be out of this world, bro.
Oh, man.
Out of this world, this conversation.
This will be next level. We're talking UFOs, aliens, all the stuff. I mean, we went really deep.
Okay, so we have already been into the future from where our friends are at right now.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, the rest of the show is going to be great. You don't want to miss the rest of the conversation. What y'all think about the rest of the conversation?
I thought it was awesome. I can't wait to go to the outer limits.
You're no help once again. I'm just here. Tony Merkel, you added so much to this thing because it's a lot of your wheelhouse right on. And we actually we unpacked a lot of good stuff, didn't we?
Yeah, we absolutely did. And hopefully at the end of the day, I hope that people have a blueprint on how to deal with these kind of things.
Come on.
And also, like was mentioned, they don't feel so crazy as they go through experiences, because there's a lot of spiritual warfare that happens around us and manifests, and we just need to know how to handle it.
It's good.
So, Brother Alan DiDio, what do you think people ought to do to be able to listen to the rest of this conversation?
Beam me up, Brewer. You got to go to odx.tv to get access to all this information. And when you do, you're going to help us liberate children from human trafficking.
We are fighting that. You know, people are talking about abductions, which, by the way, we can't find one single abduction that has happened by a spirit-filled Christian and somebody rebuked that devil in the name of Jesus.
That's right.
And that's very telling, isn't it?
Sure is.
You talked about a guy, by the way, that has that's documented hundreds of people.
Joseph Jordan. I'm going to look that cat up. But I can tell you that children are being abducted. I can tell you that children are being abducted and they are being trafficked
all over the planet Earth, but you and I, we can do something about it. For the past 30 years, we've been fighting trafficking, and I'm talking about fighting it, y'all, big time fighting it. And we've rescued over 11,000 children. We could rescue so many more if you would partner with us. And let me tell you one of the cool ways that you can do that. You can go to odx.tv, and if you sign up for stage 2 or stage 3 partnership, not only will you see the uncensored rest of this conversation, but you also see thousands of hours of content there. And then as a bonus, you'll actually be saving a kid in some very significant way. That's a win-win, right on?
It's a win-win.
It's amazing. Come on.
Guys, go to odx.tv, sign up for stage 2 or stage 3 so that you can see the rest of the conversation.
They're releasing files like crazy, JFK, all the stuff's coming out. A file was released that the CIA actually intentionally would program people to mimic alien abductions.
When it comes to the return of Christ, is it possible that every knee does bow and then afterwards, because of the propaganda that's already been introduced to our culture and society, the remaining people start telling that what you saw happen was actually an alien invasion?
I have had situations where I didn't know if it was natural, if it was supernatural. I didn't know what it was. I have had situations where I've had dreams and I don't even know if they were a dream. I don't know if I actually went someplace or if it was a dream or whatever.